It's a Sunday evening and a story just has developed. We are, of course, today talking about the Church of Scientology's application for a major redevelopment of their Saint Hill compound, their UK headquarters, and local residents in and around East Grinstead are indeed, quite rightfully so, very, very angry. And we're going to be looking at some of the responses today that Scientology's planning application has received. There have been a host of objections from local residents who are up in arms about this proposed development, citing concerns about destruction of the countryside, local heritage buildings, wildlife, the traffic issues that the so-called IES event causes. We're going to get into the weeds here. We're going to read some of these objections from local residents. But first, let's say hello to everybody who has joined the live chat. We have Bok Buddy in the house saying, "It's nice to read you're not alone and have local support in regards to the shenanigans that the Church of Scientology is getting up to at St. Hill. Hope it makes a difference in regards to their lack of permits." Absolutely. Thank you for joining, Bok Buddy. We have Mark the Dorset SP. Evening, Alex and gang. Will the local planning team issue enforcement notices better than Big Brother? Hi, Janet. See you on the 31st. Good to have you here, Mark. Petrie Nar. Evening, peeps. Hope you're all good on this wet Sunday night. It is a horrible day today. It's been very wet and windy. We have Leanie, the wonderful moderator in the house, reminding everyone to please press that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. If you haven't already, press that subscribe button and make sure you tick the bell so you get notifications when I go live. We have Ms. Freedom here. Good afternoon, Sunday afternoon. Lara FM in the house. Hey, Lara, thank you for joining. And I've noticed you have joined the ranks of us being fair gamed on the Stand League. Congratulations, Lara, and welcome to the team. Necessary Trouble. Hello, everyone. Finally caught her live. Selena in the house. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into the weeds here. First and foremost, can you let me know if my microphone is working? Over the last couple of live streams, I have had the microphone connected and it has indeed been working. But for some reason, Restream, which is the software I use for streaming, hasn't connected to the right microphone. And there's been a little bit of echo and background noise, which shouldn't be the case with this wonderful microphone. So can you let me know? Is this microphone working? Or is it this microphone closer to the laptop? That would be greatly appreciated. It does say it's connected to this one. You should have a decent audio feed, but let me know if not. Let me just double check the settings here. We are connected to this one. Yeah, okay, good. So the audio quality should be good. Deanna Ross is sending some hearts. Hello, thank you so much. Bossy Tuber saying, yes, it's working. Okay, good. All right, so if you want to read the article on Scientology Business, my blog, the link is in the words are in the description down below. I published a very lengthy report today. We're not going to be reading it all word for word, but we are going to be reading some of the responses. For those of you new to the channel or new to this story, it is a developing story. Essentially, Scientology hold this annual gathering, the IES event, International Association of Scientologists. It happens every year at their UK headquarters in East Grinstead, Sussex. They erect a mammoth 45,000 square foot marquee in order to host this event. Thousands of Scientologists come from across Europe and indeed the world to attend this thing, to hear reclusive leader David Miscavige speak about the latest and greatest in the world of Scientology. It is an event that takes place in an illegal structure. They failed to apply for planning permission for this mammoth marquee last year and were given a planning contravention notice by Mid Sussex District Council. However, it hasn't stopped them holding the event this year. It's taking place on October 31st, and they have submitted a planning application, although it's not actually for the tent itself. The application is for a major development, is what it's considered. It's classed as a major development by the council. What they want to do is pave over a large portion of a field on their property and have a large area of geocell structure, which is basically a plastic grid system that's going to be implanted into the ground to allow cars to drive over it and to park on the field. They also want to put in 2 toilet blocks, an electric substation, and these concrete pads that will allow the construction of the tent every year. It stops short of actually asking for permission for the tent, intent, but it is a major development. It is in the rural countryside. It's in an area of outstanding natural beauty, which is a protected part of the land, which makes it harder for building works to be approved. That's the backstory. Yesterday, I talked about how the application has been met with quite a lot of problems as it's been going on over the last month or so. The East Grinstead Town Council voted to reject the application. The conservation officer, which is what we talked about yesterday, rejected the application and said it's going to do damage to the heritage buildings in the local area. And today we're going to be hearing from local residents themselves who have all written in objections. So let's share my screen here. This is the thing. Let's do it the other way round so that we've got me on this side and then the article here. I've made it quite small because I'm going to be reading out the objections. So these are all comments from local residents and people who are familiar with the area who attend the IES event or events at St. Hill. God here is saying, is that an AI-generated thumbnail? I hate Scientology. Please only use real art and artists. Don't destroy the planet. I generated the thumbnail. I designed it myself. I did use AI to generate the people with the pitchforks, but in the background is a picture of St. Hill that I photoshopped in. It is heavily edited. But yes, I did use AI just to get these people with pitchforks in order to avoid privacy complaints from having real people's faces on the thumbnail. Scientology up north, Miriam's in the house. Thank you so much for joining, Miriam. Okay, let's have a look at this first comment. With regards to the proposed 600 plus car park that Scientology is proposing for St. Hill in East Grinstead, I have visited there on a number of occasions and for extended periods of time. I've travelled St. Hill Road on foot and by car many times. I can't imagine the dangers it would pose in having 600 or more cars there on that narrow road vying for a spot at the same time. I think, for safety, it would be wise to turn down this application for development in the area. Very valid point. Thank you, representation number one. On the next one, it says, I'm writing to add my comments on application DM252223, that's Scientology's application number. I have previously spent time in and around the area of St. Hill Manor, and as such, I'm familiar with the location. This application centres around building facilities for large events on the Church of Scientology premises. During these events, there is significant traffic along St. Hill Road, which increases risk to pedestrians, cyclists, and other road users. While I recognise that a new entrance to the car park is being considered in this application, my worry is that even with this, the road may be overwhelmed by the large volumes of cars this car park is set to hold. In addition, noise pollution may be a disturbance to local residents, especially given how cars may exit and leave the car park at night. To make the area safer, greater lighting or paving etc. may be required, which could detract from the rural nature of the site, as well as having an impact on the environment in its construction. By adding these facilities to the St. Hill property, I fear that using the fields as a large event space will cause more harm than good, especially with a likely increase in events that are already being held on the site. Rather than building these facilities in an area of outstanding natural beauty, which may set a precedent for further construction on the site, it would make more sense for these large-scale events to be held elsewhere where these facilities are already present and construction could be avoided. Therefore, I would urge the council to reject this application. What a fantastic comment from a local resident this is. I couldn't agree more. Scientology should hold their event at a purpose-built facility elsewhere. My objection, personally, isn't with Scientology holding their event. They have every right to hold a fundraising event if they want to do so. Scientologists have every right to practice their so-called religion. If they want to part with vast sums of their cash, only to be told that the Church of Scientology's actual scripture is that 75 million years ago, a galactic overlord named Xenu dropped H-bombs on volcanoes, and that's what's responsible for the trauma that you have in your life. And if you want to part with vast sums of your cash, only to be lied to by reclusive leader David Miscavige about how Scientology is expanding and there are more people joining the religion than anywhere else on the planet, be my guest. You have every right to do so. My problem with the event actually taking place at St. Hill is that there isn't, just simply is not present, the infrastructure that is needed to host an event of this scale. Thousands of people attend this thing. The roads get clogged up. There are miles long tailbacks. It causes severe disruption to the local community and an otherwise quiet rural town. So this objection, is spot on, and I couldn't agree more. So well done, whoever wrote that one. Let's look at another one. I would like to comment on this planning application. I strongly object to this application because of the following. The St. Hill estate is located in an area of outstanding natural beauty, with an ancient woodland located next to the proposed site. I do not think that the proposed development is suitable for such an area. The inevitable use of heavy earth-moving equipment will have a detrimental effect on the environment and the wildlife. This development proposes turning an agricultural field into a permanent car park. According to the application, this car park will only be fully utilised for a few days each year. Probably just 3 days. Turning the whole field into a permanent car park seems like a hugely excessive thing to do. The cost of this would be huge and makes no sense for such limited use unless the Church of Scientology plans to greatly increase the numbers of visitors to the estate by expanding the facilities. I think that's an excellent point because in Scientology's application, they make clear that only a couple of hundred people attend this property every week. They currently have a space for, I think it's 123 or 132 cars to park in their existing car park. And their application makes it clear that this is sufficient for the sort of traffic and for the people that attend the facilities. They don't need an extra car park for normal day-to-day use. They only need this car park for this event. So I think this is a very good, valid point that St. Hill already has adequate facilities for their current usage, and expanding the car park is completely unnecessary. In fact, I would suggest that it's obnoxious. The roads surrounding St. Hill are narrow, twisty, and are without street lighting or pedestrian pavements. In several areas, there is not enough room for two vehicles larger than a typical car to pass each other. If you want to walk down either any of the roads surrounding St. Hill Road or West Hoathly Road, you take your life in your hands. Many is the time I've had to take avoiding action to avoid a speeding motorist. Turning a car park into a field will only lead to an increase in road traffic, causing safety, pollution, and congestion problems. For example, during the series of events run by the Church of Scientology in November 2023, traffic was backed up along St. Hill Road to the B2110 crossroads. That's the road, the sort of main artery road into East Grinstead, approximately 800 yards away, simply because of the vehicles waiting to enter during field, which is where the proposed car park will be, which was being used for parking. This traffic jam caused huge inconvenience to local drivers attempting to get to the sports club, the rugby club, and elsewhere. Further developing the estate will only add to these problems. I'm very concerned that this development will be a prelude to even more development at the St. Hill estate. In recent years, we have seen several new buildings, a wing extension to the northern part of the castle, a cafeteria, a coach park, a large building for training course delivery next to the stables, a large garage solely for the display of L. Ron Hubbard's cars, plus various workshops and greenhouses. It seems that the Church of Scientology is intent on creating a campus-style environment. None of these developments have been sympathetic to the existing historic St. Hill Manor estate, and further similar developments would be an eyesore. Now, I think it's really important to note that Scientology's main building, the St. Hill Manor, which is where L. Ron Hubbard used to live, now that's not used for the delivery of Scientology courses. When you go to learn about Xenu, you do that in the castle, which was built in the 1960s by child slave labour provided by the Sea Organization. But the manor is a historic property and it's grade 2 listed. It has a lot of history and heritage attached to it. Inside the manor is the monkey room, which is a room with like a painting all over the wall of these different types of monkeys. And it was painted by Sir Winston Churchill's nephew. The building itself was built, I think, in the 1700s. There's a lot of historic value here. And what this person here is saying, I think, is quite right, that all of these developments over time have added to this site's sort of significance in terms of the impact it has on the local area. And all of these developments do harm to the heritage assets at the St. Hill Manor. Fantastic point. All of this comes after the building of a very large faux castle in the 1960s, which started without even bothering to apply for planning permission. It is a common boast within the Church of Scientology that Hubbard circumvented planning laws by claiming that any person in England had the right to build their own castle. Now, this is also a point that I think is really significant for the council to understand. In the 1960s, when St. Hill was expanding and they built the castle, it's very common knowledge within Scientology that they did so without planning permission. I remember when I visited St. Hill once, I was asking about the property and the history and all of that, and they explained their story is that they built the castle because they couldn't get planning permission for it, but they found some antiquated law that said something like you have a right to build a castle on your own land that dates from like centuries ago. So they made that case and the council couldn't do anything. They subsequently changed the law so that you can't use that excuse anymore. But the castle itself was built without planning permission. And that's something that any Scientologist in the UK will admit to. So they have a track record here of not following the rules that are set out by the local authority and just doing whatever the hell they want regardless. And I'm really glad that this local resident is aware of this and mentioned it in their objection. If permission for this development is given now, where will it end? Will the tent they erect for 3 months each year become a permanent structure? Will they then claim precedent for a concert or exhibition centre on the site, building a permanent road between that and the proposed car park? Will they build further accommodation for visitors so they do not have to leave the site? Such developments would be completely inappropriate for such an area. It may be considered that further developments can be controlled by planning law, but the Church of Scientology has a poor record of complying with the law. Witness the refusal of the Church of Scientology to apply for planning permission for the erecting of a huge marquee, 45,000 square foot, despite being issued with a contravention notice in 2024. Planting a hedge on a public right-of-way simply to prevent critics from lawfully standing there, and multiple breaches of pollution laws resulting in a large fine for sewage discharge into a watercourse in 2018. For all of the above, and for many other reasons, I believe that this planning application must be refused. Another excellent objection. Now, what they're referencing here with the sewage is, I believe it was 2018. That sounds about right. Scientology were found to be leaking raw sewage into the local countryside. I wasn't a critic at the time. I was on my way out of Scientology. I wasn't speaking out. I hadn't done a course for a year or two. I stopped considering myself a Scientologist around 2016, but I was still a bit iffy on the subject. I didn't want to think about it, didn't want to talk about it. So I was on the fray, certainly wasn't aware of this. But essentially, they have this whole waste treatment center at the bottom of their property, and it was found that this was leaking into the local environment, and literally raw sewage was killing wildlife, it was getting in the water stream, and it was polluting the whole area. And lo and behold, Scientology were found guilty of polluting the local wildlife in the local area and given a huge fine. It went to court, I believe, and they lost the case. So another fantastic thing here to get into this representation for the council to understand Scientology's track record here of not following the rules. Miss D here is saying the manor house is absolutely beautiful. I've been inside many years ago. Yeah. And I think that, look, even though they won't let you go to the manor unless you're a Scientologist in good standing or you're known to not be a critic or a former member, I do think it is a historic property with heritage value that should be preserved. And hopefully one day it will actually be open to the public to go for tours. They claim that it currently is, but it isn't. If I asked to go on a tour of St. Hill Manor, I would certainly be denied that opportunity opportunity. But nonetheless, whether or not it's open to the public, it should be preserved. And as part of the character of the building, you have to take into consideration the whole estate and the area in which the building is located. So all of this development work only detracts from the value of the property. Bossy Tuba here says that's Scientology in a nutshell, spewing literal and spiritual sewage into the world. And Scientology up north, Miriam here saying disgusting. Yeah, it truly, truly was. Here's a picture of the damage you can see to the land. I took this picture when I went for a walk recently in the area. That's the big marquee, the big tent that the event is held in. And you can see here all of the churned up mud, the damage that is done to the field in order to host their event. Scientology clearly don't care about the local environment or the damage that their event does to the area of outstanding natural beauty. All right, let's have a look at another one here. Environmental issues. While much attention is given to grass, shrubs, and trees in the planning documents submitted, there is essentially no mention made of the impact the new parking areas will have on burrowing animal life, specifically field voles, wood mice, and common shrews. Except for the common shrew, which falls under Schedule 6 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act, none of these animals fall under protected status. Their significance is as prey for other animals such as foxes, weasels, stoats, kestrels, barn owls, and in particular tawny owls, which rely on a steady diet of wood mice in order to breed. I didn't think this was going to be an educational one, but I love it. While they primarily feed on the surface, all of these are burrowing animals. Wood mice create extensive tunnel networks with chambers for nesting and food storage year-round. Field voles and common shrews burrow tunnels used primarily to escape predators, which are expanded into nesting chambers during winter months. The diagrams within the QED structures document, Site 1 Car Park Flood Risk Assessment and Surface Water Drainage, page 34, typical paving details, shows how the proposed excavation and paving methods for during field will destroy and permanently eliminate a large area of field habitat for these animals. And I must say, I love the detail that these local residents have put into their objections. They're not just saying, I don't agree with this. They're actually looking up the laws, the rules. They're putting time into the attention to detail of the application, and they're using this in their objection. So massive well done to this local resident who really clearly knows their stuff. The stabilized grass surface diagram shows excavation to an approximate depth of 338 millimeters is required for proper installation as follows. Now, I'm not going to read all the measurements because, we don't need to know that, but it goes into the exact specifications that Scientology have listed in the creation of this surface for the field for car parking. The stabilization grid will effectively block horizontal tunnel digging, while the aggregate subbase will prevent burrowing deep enough to create nesting chambers. So this is in specific reference to this geocell grid structure that they want to put in this field. So the majority of this car parking field will be this plastic grid system that's embedded into the ground so that cars can drive over it. It does allow grass to grow through so that it may look like a field for most people for the majority of the year, but the reinforced nature of it allows cars to park on it and it to be used for that purpose when they have their event. Now, in order to put this geocell structure in place, they have to dig up the entire field, lay down this permeable, sort of non-permeable, I don't know if it's permeable or non-permeable, but they have to put down this massive sheeting underneath. Then they put the geocell structure in place, and then they put earth on top of it, and then plant grass seed over it. So it will completely destroy the whole field. And then once it's in place, I think this person is quite right in that animals won't be able to dig under and forage and do what they need to do in that field because they'll be blocked by these plastic grid system things. The permeable tarmac car park diagram shows excavation to an approximate depth of 120 millimeters is required for proper installation as follows. It talks about the different thicknesses of the different things they're using, surfaces they're using. The asphalt and crushed stone will completely block the tunneling and nest building. Any tunneling and nest building. Traffic issues. The planning documents submitted give the impression the proposed new entrance and additional parking areas will eliminate traffic issues experienced in the past on St. Hill Road during events. Looking at past traffic issues, it is obvious this is not the case. The primary cause of the long backups on St Hill Road is site security have to check every vehicle and its occupants as it enters to ensure only invited dignitaries and Scientologists in what they refer to as good standing are admitted to the event. They want to be absolutely sure no outside reporters, critics, or protesters are admitted. And look, fair enough, right? They have every right to employ security measures to ensure that only invited guests are attending their property. But the significance of this point here is that that's what one of the reasons there's a traffic buildup. Creating a new entrance and a new car park won't speed up the flow of traffic because they still have to do all of those checks. So Scientology are pitching this thing as an improvement to the traffic problems that they've caused in the past, trying to pull the wool over the council's eyes. And I'm really glad that this local resident has pointed out that actually that's not the solution. Hobbs Field marquee area base issues. The plans calls for a number of permanent base pads to be installed in Hobbs Field to support the marquee used for the annual International Association of Scientologists event. The diagram within QED Structures document, Site 1 Car Park Flood Risk Assessment and Surface Water Drainage, page 34, typical paving details, shows these pads as being 450mm high. There is a note stating a minimum 585mm height is required to allow for storage, but no explanation of how the additional 135mm of height will be accomplished. Excellent point here. I love it. Calling Scientology out for the specifics on the inadequacy and lack of information in their reports. Absolutely fantastic. They're pointing out here that even their own application doesn't make sense, and the numbers don't. The math ain't mathin', as they say. Nebulous 111 says absolutely awesome. What are they like? Yeah, exactly. What are they like? Selena saying, I think it will be water permeable, I would think. Yeah, exactly. I'd imagine that the surface they put under the geocell structure would allow water to seep through, but it's not going to allow animals to burrow through it. And even if they did burrow through the surface, they've still got this plastic geocell grid to contend with. This representation continues. This appears to be a bad faith request based on the following. 2023, Scientology erected the marquee and held their IES event there without planning permission. 2024, the marquee was again erected without planning permission, and a planning contravention notice was issued. 2025, in spite of the planning contravention notice, the marquee was again erected without planning permission. In all three instances, it is apparent Scientology felt they could erect their marquee and hold the event before Mid-Sussex Planning could react to the situation, thereby avoiding the time, trouble, and expenses involved with requesting planning permission properly. What the requested permanent pads will do is dramatically decrease the time it takes to erect the marquee, making it even easier for Scientology to bypass the planning process and still hold their event. For that reason alone, permission for these pads shouldn't be denied, even if the rest of the plan is approved. Very valid point. I think these people are being very reasonable in their assertions here. They're not saying, I have a problem with Scientology and I don't think they should hold their event. What they're actually saying is, go ahead and figure out a solution, but for these reasons this particular planning application should be rejected, and these are the concerns of us as local residents that need to be addressed in order for them to agree with the plans. Fantastic point here. All right, let's carry on. Here's a picture of the big tent again, just so you can get an idea of how big this thing is. I am writing to register my concern over the proposed installation of a large marquee by the Church of Scientology located at St Hill, East Grinstead. My main concerns are as follows. The impact on the local character and surrounding landscape. To install such a large structure would significantly alter the character of the local environment, which is valued for its beautiful landscapes and nature. Noise and disturbance. Erecting a marquee of this scale is likely to, and has previously generated, considerable noise, particularly during evenings and weekends. This will have a direct impact on the peace and well-being of local residents and wildlife. Traffic and parking issues. Increased visitor numbers to the marquee will inevitably put pressure on local roads, causing disruption to those who live nearby. The possibility of the marquee staying longer than specified. A marquee of this scale might remain in place for an extended period, effectively functioning as permanent structure without undergoing the appropriate scrutiny through the full planning process. My main concerns are that this is out of keeping with the local area and it will negatively impact the residents, not to mention the local wildlife. I therefore respectfully request that the council refuse permission for this erection of this marquee. Thank you for considering my objection. Aren't we just all so polite? I'm just reading through these, and there's no anger or hatred or anything in any of these. They're actually very well written, very well put together, and indeed very polite. I do find that quite funny. Let's have a look at some of these comments before we carry on. I've been starring them as we go through. Jurgen Rabine says, "What is the fire department? What is the fire department says to the tent? Not a fire hazard." Well, look, the problem is the marquee, the tent itself, is erected by an external contractor, a company called the Marquee Group. They would do things in line with legislation because they're not Scientologists. They're hired externally and are paid to give a professional service. They erect marquees at all sorts of events up and down the country. They're professionals. They know what they're doing. So I am almost 100% certain that the marquee's construction and its disassembly would have been done in line with the rules around fire safety and so on. In terms of the interior of the event, I'm under the impression that the majority of the interior, the stage, the chairs being put out, all of that stuff is done by Scientology Sea Org members, who, of course, will not be as up to date with the rules and regulations around construction work and interior design as the professionals. So it is more likely, I would suggest, that they are the ones that would sort of be to blame for any violations in fire safety and that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean necessarily has happened. I'm sure as part of their health and safety plan for the event, which has to be submitted to Mid Sussex District Council, I'm sure as part of that, the fire department do look at these things and would go and inspect. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in this particular matter, but I'm pretty sure it does meet the fire regulations. But certainly one for people to look into for sure. Betsy Sue saying, "I'm going to bump out in a minute to go watch BFG, but wanted to show Alex some support." Thank you so much, Betsy Sue. And yeah, Blown for Good are going live if they're not live already. I didn't realize this was going to clash when I scheduled it. So Mark and Claire, I do apologize. And we'll try and wrap this up soon enough. And then you can go over and watch their channel after this. Nebulous 111, "Don't let them get away with it. They must not get away with it. Never let them get away with it. Remember, first they came. Who wants to ever be next?" Exactly. Lisa Terry here saying, "Hi Alex and chat. The authorities aren't strong enough with Scientology in general though. Surely all this should have been sorted then first. Surely all of this should have been sorted then first time they had their erection without planning permission." Yeah, absolutely. But look, government in the UK moves very, very slowly, especially with council issues like planning matters. They take their time to take enforcement action and look at all of these things. And the key thing to remember is the council have taken enforcement action already. They issued a planning contravention notice last year. They're dragging their feet a little bit this year. Who knows why? But with every day that goes past and every objection that is submitted, the case gets stronger as to why Scientology should not be allowed to host this event on their property this year. I reckon they'll get away with it, but next year it just makes it more difficult for them. And Bossy Tuber saying, "We all know what reasonable means in Scientology." Exactly. All right, let's carry on with these objections. This is the next one. "Thank you so much for helping with this situation. My comment is as follows. As a local resident, I wish to be taken into account the following. A planning contravention notice was issued to the Church of Scientology last year after erecting a 45,000 square foot marquee to host their annual IES event in October. The structure dwarfs their castle and Grade 2 listed manor and is a blot in an area of outstanding natural beauty, visible from the nearby Standen and Gravetime manors. Those are two very historic properties. Gravetime Manor, I think, is a hotel. Standen is a National Trust property. They're both local to St Hill, and St Hill's in a bit of a dip, and these properties are on the hills on either side. And you can see the big tent from these properties because it stands out like a sore thumb, because it's literally just fields, it's countryside. And then you have this massive like white marquee in the middle of it. It completely destroys the view from both places. Despite this, the structure has again been erected without permission, and 4 tents can be seen clearly from Gravetime Manor. This road is not suitable for events of this size. There is a perfectly suitable site only 6.2 miles away, a 13-minute drive at the South of England Showground. Again, excellent point, and I would support this. Scientology should just hire this local venue to host their event. It's perfect for their annual convention. It has the capacity, it has the road infrastructure and the power needs that they have, and it would cause much less disruption to the people of East Grinstead. So I agree with this point. As a local resident and dog owner who walks this road and the surrounding areas regularly, the extra traffic, blocked highway with planters, barriers and balloons, etc., along with poor lighting, puts us at unnecessary risk. I am concerned about the blatant disregard of public safety. I am further concerned about the public being invited to these events not knowing there is no planning permission. I would like to know how allowing damage to an area of outstanding natural beauty, as shown in the Church of Scientology's own photo submission, is being permitted again. Surely a stop must be put on this construction. Where is the public's assurance this structure is safe and has necessary access for fire, ambulance, etc. if required? Last year, I witnessed a fire engine struggle to get into the rugby club during the traffic chaos caused by this event. I also witnessed people being put at risk walking up a pitch black country road with inadequate lighting. The law has been defied yet again. This application is for parking at the event, a toilet block, and bases for the marquee. The marquee is up already. The event is intended to happen with or without legal approval. Please, I beg you to show care and respect for the public and stop this construction immediately. I therefore respectfully request this application is denied. And a fantastic objection that one is, for all of the reasons we've said before. All right, let's look at the next one. Thank you for your notification of planning application reference as above. I would like to have the following comments on the application formally noted, please. The application in part asks for hard paved car park for 121 spaces with toilet facilities adjacent to St Hill Road, together with hard paved access directly across from the properties at Rockwood Park. Firstly, I do not believe that extra car parking spaces for 121 vehicles is justified or needed at St Hill Manor for normal day-to-day use. The vast majority of visitors or course students are from overseas and travel to the UK on public transport, either air or train travel, and they do not bring their own vehicles. St Hill Manor has a contract with the local council for many buses for staff and students each day, which is further proof that a large number of extra spaces is not required. As a local resident, I know this is a fact. Interesting point on that one. I don't actually think that is in place anymore. So Scientology staff live at Crowborough Manor, which is actually in a different village or town altogether. And they live in a communal birthing property that is provided by Scientology in return for their 7 days a week, 14, 16-hour days a week service, working for the church. So these staff members are transported from Crowborough to St Hill every single day by bus. They have their own branded St Hill buses. And I believe in the past, what had happened was the council had an agreement with the local bus companies or the council or something to provide this shuttle service to and from the accommodation 45 minutes away to St Hill. Now, I understand that this is no longer the case because what they did is bought their own buses. And if you look at the planning history of the Crowborough birthing facility, they actually have a coach park there now where they can service and store their buses, and they have this whole infrastructure in place to look after their own coaches. So I understand that is no longer the case, but it is true that a large number of coaches show up and come and go from this property every single day of the week. Right, where were we? Many students are, yeah, here we go. Many students at St. Hill Manor are temporary residents at Rockwood Park and walk across the road to attend their courses. I believe any extra vehicle spaces required can be more than that can't be more than 25 or 30 at most each day, as course students to St. Hill Manor attend at most only a few hours per day, and therefore the car park spaces can be reused. I believe that this application for 121 spaces adjacent to St. Hill Road is only to further increase the total spaces required for only a handful of days each year for larger events and is wholly unjustified. The access requested for these spaces in the application is the entrance directly across from Rockwood Park. St. Hill Manor already has an entrance for daily use vehicles further down the road, access across from the rugby club. This is the road access that should be used for any extra hard paved car parking spaces. The entrance is closer to all of St. Hill Manor's buildings for any visitors or students and will not bring more noise or traffic disruption to any other residents on St. Hill Road. If these extra 121 car parking spaces are required for day-to-day visitors or students attending St. Hill, why is there any need for toilet facilities? This entrance across from the rugby club and the field adjacent to the St. Hill Road is a short walk to the main buildings where there are toilet facilities outside the main building. This again is more proof that this application is not justified and is just a ruse to increase the spaces that St. Hill Manor wants available for use for a large number of visitors for only a handful of days each year. I ask that this application for 121 extra car parking spaces be rejected and only spaces for 25 or 30 car parking spaces for daily use be granted. I ask that the request for toilet facilities at this car park be rejected, as this is completely unnecessary, as there is a toilet a 2 minute walk away. I ask that the application for an additional car parking access at the entrance across from Rockwood Park be rejected. The entrance is used all day and into the evening by visitors and students on foot and will present an unnecessary hazard, especially in the dark. Also, I believe that if this access is granted, there would soon follow floodlighting at this entrance 24 hours a day, causing a light nuisance to all Rockwood Park residents. Another fantastic objection, making very valid points, and again, very reasonable. It's not someone just throwing the toys out of the pram. It's somebody actually saying, look, if they want extra car parking spaces, why not let them have another 25 or 30 spaces? If that's what they need, they can have it, fine. But the scale of this development is completely unnecessary and it's obnoxious. So well done to whoever wrote this one. And I hope it's clear to people watching this as we're going through just how angry local residents are at this development. They're not angry at Scientology per se. They're angry at the destruction of the local habitats and wildlife. They're angry at the destruction of the countryside. They're angry at the increase in traffic and noise and disruption that this event causes. It's very clear that this development causes problems, and the proposals as currently submitted don't handle those problems. Nebulous here with another great comment. Absolutely, a blatant circumvention of applicable local laws, totally unnecessary, as alternative resolution exists. Precisely. Scientology don't need to hold this event here. They can hold it somewhere else. It's completely unnecessary to destroy the countryside and build in an area of outstanding natural beauty when there is a suitable location elsewhere. Linda P. Golden is here watching 2 live feeds. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for joining. Bossy Tuber here saying, why do OTs need restrooms? Shouldn't they be above base bodily functions? How funny. Yeah, precisely. If you're an operating thetan, why can't you just hold it in? All right, let's carry on. Dear Mid Sussex District Council, the Church of Scientology's proposed development of its St. Hill compound is this is my objection. I think this is the one that I wrote. The Church of Scientology's proposed development of its St. Hill compound is a prime example of this organisation's attitude that it is above the law and the needs of their parishioners supersedes that of the local community and environment. I call it a compound because that is exactly what it is. This is definitely my objection. This is the objection that I wrote in response to this application. So let me know what you guys think. I call it a compound because that is exactly what it is. From personal experience, I can attest to the fact that workers are not permitted to leave the property without permission, have limited access to the outside world, and are, for all intents and purposes, modern slaves being exploited under the guise of religion. These are the conditions workers lived under during the construction of the faux castle in the 1960s, and the same would apply for any construction work that would take place on the property in respect to this application. The crux of the matter lies with their annual gathering of the International Association of Scientologists. This is the official membership body of the so-called church, although it is not registered as an entity that trades in the United Kingdom for the purposes of tax avoidance. The property itself is designated as a place of worship and as such does not generate any revenue for the council in the way of business rates, despite the Charity Commission rejecting a bid for tax exemption in 1999. The Charity Commission's view remains that the Church of Scientology does not serve a public benefit, and the annual charity gala, which sees £50,000 checks given out to local causes, is a prime example of Scientology's attempt to distract and obfuscate the real purpose of this proposed development, which is to generate money for an overseas entity which serves no public benefit in the UK whatsoever. The IES event is Scientology's largest annual fundraising event, and ticket sales to the Saturday Patrons Ball alone generate in excess of $1.2 million for the IAS, money extracted from its members and from the local economy. The proposed development is for infrastructure to support the continuation of this event being held at St Hill, and the council's decision on this matter will effectively result in the legitimisation of an event which any reasonable person would assess as being better to hold elsewhere. As part of Mid Sussex District Council's review of Scientology's application for a public spaces protection order last year, it noted severe traffic problems, pedestrians walking in the road, and insufficient safety procedures in place to protect event attendees and members of the public on a dark country lane. The PSPO application failed, and the council made it clear these issues were a result of the Scientology event, not protesters. What a win that was. Although Scientology claimed that by building a new entrance, these traffic issues would be mitigated, but this is categorically false. In both 2023 and 24, both entrances were already being used for the duration of the event, and the miles-long tailback and local traffic disruption was caused by poor traffic management and the requirement for every vehicle to be stopped and searched prior to being allowed on the property. Scientology's plans include, for example, a large metal barrier at the new entrance, and there is no explanation as to exactly how renovating this entrance would improve traffic flow. The road itself is simply unsuitable for the increase in traffic generated by the event, is insufficiently lit, and there is no paved footpath on either side of the road for pedestrians to use. There is also no pedestrian crossing, meaning even if these plans were approved, the issue of event attendees crossing the road would remain, which is a major safety issue. The church makes it clear that this proposed car park in Duringfield would be used for events at the rugby club, which is on the other side of the road. And although it may alleviate congestion for these smaller events, it would still result in an increased number of pedestrians crossing the road in an unsafe manner. Safety is clearly not Scientology's number one priority, as evidenced by consistent failure to meet basic safety requirements around this event. For example, a 130-foot hedgerow, concealed fencing, and wooden sleepers had been placed on the public highway opposite their main entrance, which they admitted to the council was in order to obstruct protesters, without permission. West Sussex County Council Highways ordered they be removed, and only after months of legal threats and back and forth did they comply. All the while, this reduced the space available for passers-by and dog walkers to use, meaning they were forced to walk in the road due to Scientology's obstructions. Similarly, in 2023 and 24, the church placed planters, metal barriers, and other obstructions along the western side of St Hill Road, blocking the public right-of-way and forcing pedestrians to walk in the road. And as Bot Buddy says, the shrubbery Indeed. We're talking here about the shrubbery that was removed. Thank the Lord for that one. Nebula saying the area authority has a duty of care, not a duty of don't care. I like it. That's a good point. Exactly. Scientology's own additions to the property have been noted in the heritage statement they provided and described as unsympathetic. This is a continuation of a long history of unnecessary and tasteless additions to the property, which over time have permanently damaged the prominence, charm, and visual surroundings of St. Hill House, in brackets Manor. The visual environment of houses of this period is as much a part of their amenity value as the houses themselves, and Scientology care more for money than heritage or taste. The faux-style castle, for example, was built in the 1960s without the required planning permission, something which is boasted about on Scientology's own TV channel, in the documentary they produced about St. Hill. I can see no justification for any further development of this property, and fear doing so would only harm the character and charm of this protected Grade 2 listed building. It's obvious Scientology have been planning to construct a huge 45,000 square foot marquee and hold the event on their property for months, regardless of planning, and have no due regard for the local authority. Photos supplied during the LDC process, that's a legal development certificate. So Scientology were told to apply for permission for this tent, and instead of applying for permission, they applied for an LDC. Essentially, they tried to get the marquee itself grandfathered in. They tried to say that we've been holding this event for so long that we should be allowed to carry on doing it, and planning laws don't apply to us. That application was rejected, let's not forget. Photos supplied during the LDC process are an admission of guilt that this event is held in the same mammoth marquee almost annually for the best part of 2 decades, and they have never applied for permission. Why should the planning committee trust the intentions of an applicant who has just defied the law altogether? How can they be sure that Scientology will stick to the plans they have submitted and allow works to be inspected as required by law? The committee has good reason to suspect they won't. That ought to be grounds for, at the very least, a greater level of scrutiny. The event and use of the field as a car park has already done damage to the environment, and due to lack of enforcement in previous years, the impact this construction has already had on the local ecology has not been and cannot be assessed. All of this centers around mitigating the impact of Scientology's own annual IAS event, which is the largest fundraising event in their calendar. Although environmental and ecological studies have been carried out in relation to the construction of concrete base plates, there has been no assessment of the impact of the marquee itself, its construction, or its use. As a result of Scientology wanting to host a large-scale event at an unsuitable site, local residents will now have to endure weeks of noisy and disruptive construction work, and damage to the environment will occur in an area of outstanding natural beauty. Looking at the bigger picture, this construction is entirely avoidable and completely unnecessary, as the solution would be to host their event at a more suitable permanent venue, which has been designed with the event scale in mind, with the appropriate infrastructure in place to support the increase in road and foot traffic. Situated in an AONB, this property is simply not suitable for such a large development. Car park, toilet blocks, and a substation would all damage the environment and legitimize Scientology's plans for their annual event, despite more suitable alternative venues nearby not being considered. The event draws thousands of parishioners from across Europe to the site, and there are significant road safety concerns, especially caused by drivers with little to no experience of driving on UK roads. The council's PSPO report noted that there were several near misses noted in 2023, and I failed to see how the development of a car park would solve these issues. Rather, it would encourage more people to attend and may even amplify these problems. Scientology's application is littered with false statements, half-truths, and outright lies. For example, in the noise impact assessment, it states, note that the events proposed are to run only during daytime hours, and as such, the car parking noise will only be assessed against these noise levels. This is simply not true. The property's premises license allows events to continue well into the hours of darkness, and the nature of the IES event requires it to take place in the evenings. For example, the Patrons Ball is a black tie dinner event, and the charity concert takes place in the evening. I was also surprised to see a supporting statement from East Grinstead Meads Football Club. The club is located over 2 miles away, and so the additional car parking space would have little to no impact on their operations, considering the lack of paved and protected footpaths connecting the site to the football club. The leisure centre next door, which has supported the expansion of the car park, itself applied for the extension of its own car park by an additional 37 spaces earlier this year. The application was subsequently withdrawn, but demonstrates how any demand for additional parking is limited to just a small number of spaces and hardly justifies the creation of a 600 plus space car park at St Hill. This is not just an application for a new car park, this is a wide ranging, full scale redevelopment of a rural landscape into a venue for one of Scientology's largest gatherings in their annual events calendar. It would result in permanent change to a protected area designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty for the purpose of a single 3-day event that takes place once a year, which would be much better suited being hosted in a purpose-built venue elsewhere. This development is totally unnecessary and could be avoided if Scientology was simply to consider using a nearby events venue instead. I therefore strongly urge the council to reject Scientology's application. And that's the end of the representations that I've quoted in this article. There are more. I just didn't put them in this article. I didn't quote every single one because I just simply ran out of space and time to put this article together. There are, I think, more than a dozen representations that have been submitted by local residents, all in a similar vein. Local residents are angry. People who travel to East Grinstead and visit the site are angry, and quite rightfully so. And my point remains that Scientology should just host this event somewhere else. Nonetheless, Scientology's event will be taking place this year in an illegal structure despite a lack of enforcement action, and I strongly urge Mid Sussex District Council to do something about this. This isn't just a case of an unauthorised structure being constructed, it is the destruction of a protected area of outstanding natural beauty, and it is the legitimisation of an organisation that has been found guilty of fraud in the past. This is the largest fundraising event in their calendar in Europe, and this is where they make their money. This organisation has been found guilty of fraud. How are the council not paying closer attention to this thing? I do not know. But one thing I do know for sure is that regardless, we will be there in protest on October 31st, and I invite you all to join. If you are around the area or can get to St Hill or East Grinstead on Halloween, please do come and join us. The event website or the protest website is iasprotest.com. You'll find all the information on there. I hope we have a good turnout. It looks like we've got quite a few people already signing up to attend. So I do invite you all to visit and take part in the protest. If you're not in the UK or not local or can't make it, please join the live stream. I'll be there with my camera for the whole day. We'll actually be protesting across all 3 days at this event, so please do tune in, share on social media, leave comments, all that sort of stuff. It does help. I really do appreciate it. I also want to shout out, before we wrap up here, Robert for becoming a member on Buy Me a Coffee. So thank you so much, Robert, for your support. For those of you who want to support the activism that I've been doing, support the protest, all that sort of stuff, Buy Me a Coffee, there's a link in the description down below. That's the way to financially support. There's different wish list items. There's also memberships that are slightly different to YouTube memberships. You get a few more perks, and you can donate to, you can sort of sign up to donate regularly, even if it's just a £5 a month. It does help. It all adds up and helps me do what I'm continuing to do. So thank you, Robert. Welcome aboard. And thank you to those of you who want to support as well financially. There's also PayPal, Amazon wishlist, all that sort of stuff. The best way of supporting the channel is actually not financially. It's by liking and commenting once the video finishes, once the live chat disappears next to the video. Please do come back to this video and leave a comment underneath, because that's what pushes the video out to more people and gets more people to be aware of what's going on. The more East Grinstead residents that are aware of this major development, the better. So thank you in advance for everybody who does that. Last couple of comments I've starred as we've been going through here. Selena saying the Church of Scientology would, I imagine, have to provide a risk assessment with an application to the council and then have to abide by it. Indeed, they do have a premises license which allows them to host these events, and as a condition of that, they have to provide a risk assessment for the event every single year, but that's confidential. I haven't been able to get my hands on it through Freedom of Information Act requests, but I do understand they do have to apply, they have to give some sort of risk assessment for this event every year that's reviewed by the council. Selena also saying the wheels of justice turn slowly, but the turn in the right direction. Exactly. Kestrel 42 backing up my point here, saying why not just rent a suitable site for the event? Exactly. And Selena here saying they could just have everyone arrive by shuttle from a car park or hotel elsewhere. That's another option. That's one of the big problems with this application, is they just simply haven't assessed all the available options that would mitigate all of these problems. Scientology have just come in guns blazing saying we want to hold the event on our property and we're going to do it regardless. Whereas any normal, rational person who is submitting a planning application would actually look at the problem that they're trying to fix with this application and assess all of the different outcomes and whether this is actually needed, the development, or whether they can mitigate the issues by hosting the event elsewhere or having a shuttle service or whatever it may be. They haven't done that assessment, and I think it's really key that they do go back to the drawing board and look at their event as a whole and whether they even need to hold it in the UK. Why not hold it at the Shrine Auditorium or hold it at the Ruth Eckert Hall, which is what they do over in the States for their events there? It would be much more suitable, in my opinion. Anyway, guys, that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for joining. As I said, please consider supporting the channel. Super chats and all that stuff is also greatly appreciated. If you are interested, Blown for Good are currently live, so go and watch Mark and Claire. I'll be over there in the live chat shortly. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you've got any comments or questions or feedback on my live streams. I'm always looking to improve. Thank you, everybody, for supporting, and I'll see you guys on the next one.